Welcome to Sasquatch Shills, where Cat Sasquatch speaks and nobody cares. But we are here today with one of my personal favorite YouTubers. I've actually he's largely responsible for the reason I started this channel in the first place, because I had originally planned on just doing whatever come to mind and kind of fell backwards into jokes and shows. But I really wanted to get a show going well enough to meet a handful of specific YouTubers, and Ozark Yeoman is one of those YouTubers. And there's a decent reason why it is that you've probably never heard of him, except for on my show specifically, unless you happen to have been a sub of his beforehand, and that's highly unlikely given that there's 3.8 billion people on the whole interwebs, and he's got about 800 subs. So we're going to try to change that whole scene tonight. It's this thing. You know this guy, right? Carnal Conservative. Yeah, he's a total asshat, but he's an asshat on the internet, and we like to laugh at things that asshats say. So that's what we're doing. And it's not like I don't necessarily disagree with him. I just don't necessarily agree with him.
In other words, if I were to, as a man, hear of another man saying, "I don't need no woman, I can rock this single dad life," he's not a man, he's an asshole. Every man, whether he is single, whether he's not single, whether he is married or unmarried, whether he has children or he does not have children, every man understands that if he has children, he will require a woman in the near future. It's not even a question. It is simply known, Khaleesi. That is just how life works. If he has children in his life, he is going to need a woman's help to take care of those children without question, without any debate, without any really input from any other person, because, well, we were not pressured, deluded, abused, and systematically bombarded by propaganda telling us we were not brainwashed into believing that we could have it all.
And that was the Carnal Conservative with his few words of wisdom. I don't know. I have a buddy of mine who raised a couple of kids with his husband, and those kids seem to be some of the most well-adjusted people. They're also rampant, rabid conservatives. So I don't know. I think they did a good job. I kind of agree with it. So, I mean, my experience may be different from other people's experience is all I'm saying. And this is Mandatory Carry doing what Mandatory Carry does best.
I would rather you hate me for telling you the truth than you hate me for lying to you, than you curse me for lying to you. I can live with you hating me. I can't live with you being dead because I lied to you.
Riveting, right? I don't know. He's always got this thing. He's got a little thing he does at the beginning of each stream that I think is absolutely darling.
F-bombs are not armed and will not be dropped.
This means you will not hear the F word, in case you didn't know. Although you might be surprised what word that actually is. Maybe. Which brings us kind of to the topic that Ozark Yeoman wanted to talk to me about, which is, in general, the effect that the more constitutionally minded Leos that were on the force 2 years ago being filtered out of the law enforcement by COVID restrictions and mandate. How much of an effect do you think that will have on direct law enforcement? So without further ado, he is the man with the master plan. No, don't remove him. Don't do that thing. That's not what I want to do. I want to do this thing. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Buddy. Good. How you doing, Sasquatch?
I'm alive and kicking. That's good. It's a good thing. Yeah. Glad to have you. I'm really happy that you decided to come on. I'm going to take away your big screen. Yeah, there we go. All right. So you started this channel, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's been about 2 years now. I'm going to
find out in just a minute, right? Because I got your first video loaded up, but we're going to go check it out.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, it has been a while, and boy, a lot of things have changed since then, but seems like I'm pretty much doing the same thing I was,
So you started the channel for to basically just what? Vent? You do reviews, you do like equipment reviews, you do thing reviews, you do gun reviews, you do sometimes news stories, news reviews, reviews of the stories on the news. And by the way, your most popular 3 videos, I can only play one of them on my channel.
Really?
Really. The reason being is that the other 2 are subjects that are directly referenced, that are directly mentioned in terms of service, right? And I'll tell you what they are after the YouTube stream. I'll drive if you're still around. I know you're at work and you got things you got to do, but we'll work around all that. Your life is more important than my YouTube channel. Hey, y'all like that chair? How about that?
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, that's good shit. All right. So would you say it's more review based or political based?
The bulk of it is more political based, yeah. Political and news tied to that, covering the news. And I'm definitely absolutely 100% biased.
Of course. I mean, you heard the theme song, right? Talking about biases you don't even know about, and there's nothing you can do about it except admit it's there, and then you're still screwed.
Yeah, I thought he hit the nail on the head with a song. I mean, I could never do that musically, but yeah, it reminds me a way of kind of what Tom McDonald does.
Yeah.
Seems like he kind of took a step further than Tom McDonald. I mean, you can tell that's somebody that's actually been paying attention and actually reading the philosophy behind the talking heads and what they're saying. Because if you read the philosophy behind it, it would scare the ever living crap out of you to see what they're trying to push.
I'm not going to try to mention the Project Mockingbird at all. Oops. My bad. Just blew that one right out of the water, didn't I? Anyway, so in the future, okay, let's say that you wake up tomorrow and you had 30,000 subs. What would you do anything different? I mean, would you change the way you do your content? Would you try to dedicate more to the content, or is it just a hobby for you? It's just something you do to do it.
You know, it's kind of a creative outlet. Everything swirling around your head. It's a little bit of an outlet to get out there. And the main thing is I would keep doing it exactly the same way I'm doing it. And I've even been thinking about this anyway. I've never done anything based on how many subs I did or didn't have. And the only thing I would probably do is there are some kids, and I'm not kidding, like actually kids that know how this editing technology can, help me with editing software and at least tell me how it works. My main thing is I'm not going to spend a ton of my time focusing on editing and all that, because I know some guys it's taken over their life doing that. And yeah, I'd kind of keep doing what I'm doing, and I pretty much just stick to it,
Fantastic. I can fully agree with that. In fact, I didn't tell you this before I brought you up because I kind of wanted to be a surprise. One of my I have a checklist of things I have to do before I do other things involved with the channel. Like before I could brand, even though you can brand at 100 subs, which is something you need to do, it'll make your link a whole lot better, a whole lot easier to recognize. There's one. He'd like your content, I guarantee it. Bigfoot Anon, he's a cool kid. If you ever decide to do a show and bring somebody in, bring him in. That man can talk 200 miles a minute endlessly. And he's in great, terrible movies. Terrible, great movies. It's kind of hard to get it across right. But I'm sorry, I got distracted. What I'm getting at is, as far as the topic for the show, you specifically came at me with, I came at you with a question. The question was, what filtering effect do the COVID mandates have? And in my mind, I was kind of thinking between red states versus blue states, because the blue states have gone much, much harder on the COVID restrictions and the mandates and everything. The red states have some of them have, some of them haven't. I mean, they've kind of gone diet progressive on us. I'm not sure what that's all about, but nobody seems to agree with it, or at least nobody I know. I guess I do know 2 or 3 people. Like my next guest next Tuesday, Miss Fiona Rawls, is probably a weird raging leftist, but that's fine. I'm going to talk to her about her views and how she feels about it. So, it'll be just as effective, I guess. I mean, it makes sense. What's your opinion on that as far as like the filtration process that takes place?
Yeah, I think they would love the idea of finding out which officers, will refuse to comply with, like, for instance, vaccine mandate and sticking something in their own body. And officers who question the official narrative and, like, why are we only seeing one narrative and one set of data, and anything that even contradicts it, boom, is just insta banned and deemed, and they've expanded the definition of, being contrary to vaccines. You know what I mean? I'm not
Yeah.
tripping in verbal algorithms here, but they're filtering out those cops that would refuse to comply. Yeah, I think it's about finding officers, not even who, they're perfectly fine with officers who say, well, I don't like vaccine mandates and I'm against it and I don't think they should be enforced. But then they still comply for the sake of complying to keep their job, because you're threatening to take away their living. It may not be a total litmus test of who would follow unconstitutional orders, but it is a big litmus test, and it will filter out a lot of them. And I've talked about before a parallel economy. I only bring it up because it's a relevant point to this. They're trying to force everybody out of the workforce with 100 or more employees, that would not comply. So now they have to go get different jobs in places that don't have vaccine mandates or haven't enforced it or allow weekly testing, whatever. Now you have them in a corner. Now you have them exactly where you want them, and you literally have them separated even in the workplace. They've been separating us and dividing us every humanly way possible. The internet has vastly helped with that, with all of us getting in our own echo chambers.
Right.
But
you voluntarily walk into your own echo chamber when you sign those terms of service.
Yeah. Now, my issue with YouTube and platforms that call themselves private companies is, for one thing, it's been factually and objectively proven that they are not, private companies. They follow the government's orders. They wouldn't exist right now without the government. When it's a co-op between private sector and government to where it's not private, it's not private. But another thing, the Article 230, they claim to have exemption from copyright and not have criminal liability only if they allow free speech. If it's a public platform, like when we talk on our phone, two drug dealers arrange a drug deal on a phone company is not responsible. Now, if the phone company, like YouTube or whatever, starts actually censoring and filtering people based on their opinions or what they think is fact-checked according to their own opinions, and only one data that's been allowed and approved by the government, guess what? Now they're acting as an agent of the government, and they have nullified their own Article 230 exemption. They're acting as a publisher. And when you're a publisher, that means you approve of everything done on your channel. So something illegal is done on YouTube or Facebook, guess what? They should be legally held accountable for approving it, because they're not a public platform anymore. They're a publisher. And they should be charged for copyright, all the copyright violations they've ever committed.
I agree. I can agree with creative property being personal property to an extent, but I'm of the opinion that once you put that on a public platform, provided it is not repeated verbatim and perfectly, like as long as you screw it up somehow or do something to it, that's a new product. Now, I do editing on things and I haven't had any real copyright problems, provided I did edit it. But it has been an issue. I have no copyright strikes, but I do have, I don't know, probably 70 copyright claims. I don't know. I got a whole shitload. Every one of these shows picks up dozens of them. So, which I got good news. I got good news. I got great news. I have actually been copyright claimed by the proper record producers that actually do Cog's music. So that's good. I've been being hit by some other group for some reason. It wasn't even their music.
Yeah, and that's all. And it's funny how they've got algorithms picking up on all of that now too.
Because the music industry created the copyright system in the first place. They are largely responsible for YouTube's undying devotion and dedication to eliminating music on YouTube. And I have no problem with that. I mean, it's Cog's song. If he wants it, he can have it. I don't care. He's nice enough to let me use it. He's not trying to hit me with takedowns and stuff, so that's cool. I really dig the song for an internet show, laughing at people on the internet or introducing people on the internet, but I get another one. There's thousands of little channels out there making music. It'll be fine. But it's so perfect. Okay, so let's take New York, right? Please, somebody take New York. We don't really want it anymore. Just take it. Seriously, they came in and did the vaccine mandate months before anywhere else in the country did, and they lost a good significant portion of their standing people around that time. Anybody who could take an early retirement took an early retirement. Anybody who wasn't down with the plan coming into it as a probationary officer, they were just let go. They were given their walking papers. People who had been there long enough to be outside of the probationary period, but not long enough to retire early, some of them were offered various packages that were also closed by non-disclosures. So if they accepted them, they weren't allowed to speak on what it was they accepted. And if they didn't accept it, they weren't allowed to name what it was offered, right? Only that an offer was made. And about half of them accepted whatever that offer was. The other half just walked off the job on a Tuesday. Those people that left are the people we would prefer to have as cops, in my opinion, because they left for a personal stand. And I guarantee you, most of them either went to other jobs locally or went to red states to be cops.
They did. Yeah, they did. And I've literally heard about these cases where people have. And I mean, it's gotten even on a very personal level. It's at the point now where if you live like in my town, I live outside of town, but in my county, in my state, I am comfortable saying I live in Missouri. If we see an Illinois tag or a California tag or whatever, somebody comes in, I mean, everybody's going to see that and think about it and know about it. And when they get out, you're going to know in about 5 minutes when they're like, thank goodness, I'm happy to be out of there. And this is the reason why. The good thing is it's backfired on leftists a little bit, because a lot of the people that moved to Texas, for instance, and this is a broader spectrum, including the law enforcement that left, but other people as well. And they're usually professional people, skilled laborers, professionals. They're usually people that were more red than blue, and it has actually backed up and boosted the numbers in some ways in states like Texas and Missouri.
Who would do that? An abstract look. Him and Mexican Longhair had a interview posted today on MLH's channel. So if you get a chance, swing by there and check it out. It's actually an interesting kind of behind the scenes view at how he goes about exchanging his artwork and stuff. So that's neat. That's pretty cool. I kind of dug it. Also, it shows you exactly how modest Tom is. Tom sat here through an entire show, absolutely bright pink the whole time. Wow, it was perfect timing. And so he was just embarrassed by me gushing over the fact that I really like his art, and I like the way he went about doing that particular painting, and I really like this and I like that. And he was like, man, just stop. You're gonna make my head swell. ATL Auditor US Constitution is in the house. He's one of my previous guests. So is Tom, for that matter. Squirrel Sniper. So I've always been curious, are you hunting squirrels, or is the squirrel the sniper? That's my question. But I got a video right here that's set up. I don't know if you recognize which one it is, because you've got this format that you do that's kind of a staring camera talk thing. I'm not real good at that, but you do it very well. And it's this thing here.
Continue some of the old ways because they were getting rich off of it, of course. But they put the methods in place knowing that it could be changed, and it was changed. And America has become more what the Founding Fathers set up to be. But there's a mutual agreement across the board that every citizen agrees to abide by the law if the law respects everyone's common rights and the Constitution. The government is increasingly pushing past the Constitution, so people will generally not respect the law. We're one of the only countries We actually have the right to carry a firearm and protect ourselves. Many states violate that. So you know what? In more rural areas, it gets to the point where they're like, you know what? The criminals run everything. They run the show. The cops can't do anything about it. I have no choice but to not obey the law. And then...
That is a very good point. If you do not give a man a way out, he will make one for himself.
Yep.
That's a fact.
And that's something that people from either very rural parts of America all the way to especially the big cities understand. I think maybe the only places they don't understand it, I'm just talking culturally, I'm not insulting them, I'm saying like in the suburbs, you know, people that live there, they're very successful, well-educated, they work very, very hard to get there. But it's almost like culturally speaking, the lack of struggle, they don't understand that bad laws and unconstitutional laws that violate the rule of law, that it makes it so a man has no choice but to pick which law he is or is not going to obey to make a living, to survive, to get by.
I went and dug up something for you, brother. I'm not sure how you're going to feel about it, but you recognize the video? You remember this one?
Yeah. Oh man, that was a long, long time ago. Yeah.
Seems like it, don't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It was one of my first ones, I think, was it?
Yeah, it is the first video, the very first, earliest Ozark Yeoman video that's available.
Yep, that's the dancing FBI agent.
Exactly.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Ozark Yeoman. So, I saw something on the news today, and I just had to make a video about it. I have to finally break my silence, because this was just... had so many things wrong in it. It was about an FBI agent I saw on the news. He was off duty. He was at a party. He was dancing, and apparently he did a backflip. His firearm fell out of his small of the back holster, landed on the ground, which so many things had to go wrong to get to that point. And eventually what happened was the news media said it went off, which I know.
Okay. I think we all know that when a firearm goes off in your possession, that is reckless discharge and chargeable by offenses all the way up to and including 5 years in jail, depending on whether or not it did damage or hit someone.
Yep.
And that someone can be yourself, by the way. You can be charged with some type of a negligent injury charge because you shot yourself. I got a buddy of mine who was charged twice initially until they proved that he had shot himself twice with one bullet.
Wow.
Let me explain. He was walking through some really thick woods, like some really, really thick swamp, right? And he stepped over near a snake, saw the snake, tried to draw his pistol, shot himself through his upper thigh, out of his, behind his, the back of his thigh, into his upper calf, and out of the bottom of his calf. His leg was bent.
Oh.
Think about it. He shot himself twice with the same bullet. When he went in and they were trying to, first he had to prove that it didn't happen inside the city limits. Then he had to prove that he was legally hunting in the area that he was hunting. Then he had to prove that it was not a discharge with malice. And then he had to prove, you know what I'm saying? Like there's this whole list of shit you've got to prove when you come in with a GSW.
Yeah.
Welcome to America.
To the point where maybe it's just a negligent discharge, and then if they can somehow charge him with hurting himself.
Now, a negligent discharge is a chargeable offense.
Yes, it is.
So even down to that point, you still end up having to do something, right? I mean, I don't know what. I'd put them through a gun safety course or something.
I'd make them go to a gun range with a bunch of people that have never been trained before.
Oh, dear God, no.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I'll lose my hair. You put me on a gun range with some untrained people. I won't take but one at a time. I refuse. I absolutely refuse. I had a woman muzzle flash me with a shotgun one afternoon, and it was because I handed it to her, said, "This is hot," and she turned around and waved it right across my head. I lost my shit. We left immediately. We never fired nothing. I just put her in the car and we left. All right, so that was your oldest video, right? Now I got this little bit that I do with each guest. And I was supposed to do this before that video, but I'm a moron and easily distracted. But
You don't want cars?
Yes, I'm a paleontologist.
Oh, it's okay. There's dynamite in this bag, too. I am a paleontologist.
I'm a paleontologist.
Paleontologist Paleontologists study really old stuff.
That is Deary Off the Wall, if anybody's interested. It's an absolutely absurd movie. I'm sure Bigfoot Anon would approve. It's that good. Bad. It's excellent. It's great. It's good stuff. But the whole thing there is I'm a YouTube paleontologist. And I go dig up your oldest video and just throw it in your face and be like, yeah, 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 yeah. You know, if you've got anything in particular, like any channels that you watch, what does Ozark Yeoman watch when he sits on the pot? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, man, it seems like I kind of wind up going from a couple different channels to a couple different channels. I always enjoy watching things like Paul Harrell. And there are some of the bigger channels that I'll watch. Now, some of the, I don't know, some of the smaller channels that I'll watch are like, really guys that have gotten to be friends of mine. Josh Benware, New Texican. I know some of these guys don't put out a whole lot of, content. Some of them do here and there and all that. I'm trying to think of a few others. Midnight Range TM, he always does some cool live streams. And then like some of the bigger channels are like, Brandon Herrera is Gunman Review.
Oh yeah. Brandon Herrera is a fucking god tier. Another one of the reasons why I started my YouTube channel was in a tiny, tiny microscopic hope that I'll be able to buy one of his 50s, one of his AK-50s. God damn, that thing is sexy.
Yeah.
Total anti-material.
It's like he's dangling this invention as far as he is like, I might come out with the AK-50 or whatever, but he is funny. He's funny. He's a national on the screen, and he's also proven that he knows his stuff from his history to his builds and all that, which that's a very rare combination of skills to have.
And it doesn't hurt that he's like a total fucking beefcake either. I mean, like that is a pretty man. Every time I'm watching his anything he does, my wife walks through and is like, "Who's that guy? Who is that guy? You met that guy yet? Has he been on your show yet?"
Probably. I bet Hollywood stars would probably try to cancel him by now, not because of his political stuff, but because they're jealous of his hair and stuff like that. They can't get him to sign on for shampoo.
Of his hair. I mean, his hair is absolutely freaking immortal. That stuff is
bad.
Dude,
that dude does have business sense. I'm surprised he doesn't have like a contract with the shampoo company by now or something like that. I mean, the dude's he should do that.
Well, as far as I know, he makes most of his money selling AKs. I mean, that's what he does is build AKs. He has a whole factory doing that shit. So, if somebody's going to build an AK-50, it should be him. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the dude has got his brand and his niche down.
Oh, yeah.
But he's one guy, even like when he does like a laugh at his own joke or something, he's somebody that can actually get away with that.
Yeah.
He's just funny. I think it's when you're telling something that you actually find funny. And when you say, have you ever seen a lame comedian getting out there and it's like they're trying to repeat a set?
Yes, I've seen feminist comics.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. One of the funniest things on YouTube, I like to watch Matt Walsh because I may not necessarily agree with 100% of whatever he says, but the dude's hilarious. He's the ultimate sarcastic conservative commentary. And his whole thing, I mean, he's like the ultimate troll. The thing about people that do things that may seem abrasive or rub people the wrong way or whatever, even if people don't agree with all their approach and what they do, what's the end result? Because I guarantee you a bunch of small police departments suddenly have to take some class, even if they're grumbling about it on the weekend, about this is what people have the right to do. And no, you cannot approach them and hassle them just because you don't like it or just because you don't agree with them or, or find some lame little reason to go pull them over and go after them. Because then that's going to hurt the police department's reputation. It's going to be bad PR. And the end result that nobody can argue with is respecting people's constitutional rights at the end of it.
No joke, man. I mean, when it comes down to it, a lot of people don't understand that we don't live in a democracy. They are firmly on the footing that in a democracy we have to, but I'm sorry, it was never designed to be a democracy. It's not intended to be a democracy. And if you make it a democracy, it will not work. It will end like the French Revolution. Off with their heads. So do you really want to be on the receiving end of what the people decide to do with our elite leaders whenever we get to the end of our Pax Romana? I don't want to end the Pax Romana. I kind of like living in not interesting times. I want to be really bored. Really bored. This is nice. I like this. This is nice. This is okay. I don't want it to get any worse. It already fucking sucks.
Yes, exactly. One thing that always bugs the tar out of me is because I'll bring up something that I'm like, they are actively violating your rights in this way. And one thing I didn't mention before, but what I do with my channel is I try to fill in the gaps. If there's an important point about an important event, I don't see anybody else, even the conservative, libertarian, classical, liberal, whoever commentators, and they don't mention, I'm like, how did you miss that? Don't you know your history? That's why I'll make a video on it or something. And then some people say, well, yeah, but we always knew they were going to do that. I'm like, well, that's part of the problem is that you've been conditioned to think, well, they're going to do it anyway. They do it. And then you just sit there and take it. And public awareness alone, having a negative perception from the public because of a very vocal minority, that is extremely powerful. Our country would have died several times over if it wasn't for that.
Andrew Jackson. Anybody who wants to know what happens whenever you get a populist in as president who decides to do the right thing, regardless of the consequences, take a real good hard look at Andrew Jackson. He was probably the powers that be will tell you he was the most terroristic president in the history of the United States. But the people that actually study the political climate of the time will tell you that he did the only thing that would stop a civil war. He got rid of the banks.
Yeah, and one thing people don't understand about the perspective at the time was that we had a more Jeffersonian style of government where it was somewhat decentralized. States had a level of autonomy. We only defended ourselves. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you don't have a strong defense. We only defended ourselves if it was a direct threat to us. And if it was a direct threat to us, we not only attacked the enemy, we completely obliterated. Then we didn't do any of this nation building nonsense. We did it, and then we got out of there.
Well, I don't know, man. That manifest destiny concept kind of, I think it served us quite well for the time period.
Yeah.
Might have done without a few blankets, maybe some fire water. We might have done better without the fire water and the blankets, but we'd certainly be on a more ergonomic footing, as it were. But
yeah, I'm all for America being geographically what it is today. You know, one thing that upsets me is like we did the Fed to copy after Europe. Well, it was those exact things. It was those exact things that led to World War I, and then by proxy, or then as a continuing result, World War II as well, was these central banks in these countries competing with each other. Germany was just about to take, this is something I just heard, I need to study into it more. Germany was just about to overtake England, I believe, as the #1 economic power in Europe before World War I broke out. That meant that a lot of people were very motivated.
World War I. Don't confuse that time period with the opening of World War II. That was a totally different mechanical revolution. World War I, Germany was at the forefront of all mechanized everything.
Yep. And if people want to know what's the end result of these powerful central banks, which are linked in a fascistic or in some ways socialistic ways with the government, when you have so-called private sector that's really a government-backed monopoly tied in with the government and backed and powered by the government, this is what happened. World War I is what happened. Look at how horrible it was. And this is something that honestly, I think a lot of leftists, a lot of really purist leftists who don't see themselves as authoritarian, it seems like we largely agree on this. This is something that every time I discuss it with other conservatives, obviously I grew up in a conservative region, conservative home, conservative household. I really approve of a lot of the values I was taught and everything. My thing is I don't like being authoritarian. I don't like regulating something just because even I don't like it or personally want to use it. I don't necessarily want to regulate it against somebody. That's where in those centralized banks on Jekyll Island, Georgia, a couple hotshots met together. Yeah, you know this. I can tell by a smile. You know this. They met together. They toured Europe first, decided that they wanted a central bank like what they see in Europe. They're like, well, we got to be like Europe. And everybody that looks at Europe and says, oh, we need their programs. We need to be like them. We need that stuff. Well, Europe is basically most countries in Europe right now are benevolent dictatorships. They take most of people's money. Everything you get is handed out by the government. And you know what? If they live comfortable lives right now, if they don't have things dictated to them so much, it's only through benevolence. But benevolent dictatorships will never last. Eventually, it's going to get heavy-handed. Look at how they've otherized the unvaccinated in society and are banishing them from society. And right. It's just getting to the point where, you know what, now in Australia, they're taking people to internment camps. Yeah. And there is no longer any justification for any COVID restrictions or vaccine mandates, even if they were saying that the government has the authority to do it, which I disagree. Or even if they claim they have some type of precedent, okay, well, that's a bad precedent. That violates basic human rights. You know, I even say the Constitution did not invent human rights. The Constitution was merely put in place as a way to codify it and tell the government, no, you can't do this because it violates inherent human rights.
For the government to acknowledge that these rights are inalienable, not to acknowledge that you get these rights from the government. The government did not write the Constitution. Free men wrote the Constitution.
Yeah. And, you know, and that's another thing. Everybody who maybe demonizes America's inequalities in the past and the problems we've had in the past. Thankfully, today we're better than we ever had been. But you know what? You have 21st century expectations for a bunch of 18th century dudes. I've said this before. The new colonies in America were not some at first, we weren't some advancement moving greater than Europe. In some ways we were. You know, this some people don't realize. Even though we had the exact same population, a lot of them came from England. The average American in the American Revolution was about 3 inches taller, I believe, than the average Englishman. And this was before all the abuses of the Industrial Revolution. The reason why we were free, we had more food, we had better protein, kids grew up freer, lower stress, not in nasty big cities. And nothing against big cities. I'm saying a clean, healthy, natural way of living. Healthiest people I know usually live in big cities and they're eating organic everything. But they were literally 3 inches taller on average because they lived freer.
Yeah, that's good. I'll hit the like button too. I got to remember to like my own videos sometimes. It's recorded.
Yeah, but
okay.
Yeah, but America, one of the reasons they were so ready to defeat and fight against England was because they didn't need them. England needed us. And at the time, we said, why are we taking this from you? What people don't understand with the stamp tax was it wasn't an option of, if you go buy the tea, then pay this tax. It was, no, we're going to come with 5 barrels to your house. And whether you can afford it or not, you're going to buy them and you're going to pay the hefty tax to support the government-backed East India Trading Company, even if it costs you so much money that you can't afford to buy food to feed your family this winter. That's how bad it was.
And it was less than a 0.02% tax that triggered the American Revolution.
Yeah. And the key thing, it wasn't just the burden of the tax itself. It was the fact it was a company that was owned by the British Empire that was being pushed on you. You had to buy their product. And the tax was given with no representation. The Tea Party, they shouted mandates. Yep, exactly. Government mandate, they shouted no taxation without representation. Now we were no longer citizens with some say over our own governance. Now we were only subjects, just like all the other colonies where it was exploitative. It was no longer a mutually beneficial relationship with common law rights guaranteed. The new colonies were a throwback to the Dark Ages after the fall of Rome. In fact, in many ways, it was almost just like little fiefdoms, different groups of people that were very different from each other with their own.
Yeah.
This
Well,
was
I
just
do compare it to the Pax Romana. Yeah, I mean, that's accurate.
yeah.
Is there anything you want to tell everybody out there? I'm going to give you the big screen for a second and let you go with it.
Yep. Just basically, let's fight to preserve our liberty. And one thing is, never ever accept it when we are told, well, we saw this coming, you know, that's just the way it is. Public awareness in and of itself is how things get done, is how abuses don't happen. When it's public and it's widely known, even if it's a small vocal minority speaking up, that's when authoritarians will kind of stop in their tracks and not push forward with it. Everything they try is a litmus test to see what we'll put up with.
I really appreciate you coming by, man. I'm sorry it kind of interrupted your day. I was really trying to do it any other time, but it worked out. We're good. We're at the end of the show, and you did excellent. I'm absolutely proud of you, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah.
I would really like to have you on another time with a totally different topic and setup when I'm not doing the Shills show. We'll come in and do a, I don't know, I might get some weird leftard come in and y'all can hash it out between you, and we'll do it like a straight up debate or something, you know, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes to scream at each other, something like that, you know?
And you know, and that's the thing, I can be totally civil as long as somebody else is civil. We can disagree as much as you possibly can, and I'll be happy. Just I put my idea out there, they put their idea out there.
Right. And that's kind of the idea, is to try to create an open discourse where the two people in the scene can't actually snap on each other actively, right? The whole point will be for there to be 10 seconds between each side speaking, where I would come out and try to highlight whatever it is they said as I understood it, and then open the question to you kind of situation. I mean, it's a work in progress, but I got a couple of people in my backstory that I could bring up that are willing to do stuff like that. And they've been expressing interest in it. And it is different from a usual panel screen. I would come in as a media producer, basically, and y'all two would basically have the camera, and I would bring up relevant documents, citations, anything like that y'all could bring to the table. So I'm working on it in the backstage. Give me a couple of weeks and I might have something actually that I could show people. But I'm going to tell you, when I do that, I'm going to pop it out like someday at 2 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon or something. It's just going to be some really weird time so that I can get some testing on the format done and nobody can see it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, yeah, you definitely had a knack for this. I think that you've found what you're good at and you're totally running with it, and I think it's working. So
I'm trying to. Thank you. People seem to like the idea of finding the channels that the algorithm has forsaken. They seem to really like that concept. And when I thought about it, I came to the conclusion I cannot do it based on a political point. I cannot do it based on a moral standpoint. I cannot do it based on any particular standpoint in anyone's life, because there are so many channels, and some of the content is absolutely phenomenal, but it's weird left-wing stuff. Some of the content is absolutely phenomenal, except it's weird right-wing stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I'm just not interested in this stuff. I'm not interested in that stuff. I'm interested in the excellence of the content. Like Fiona Rawls, strange chick, but at the same time, when she sets up a camera, she doesn't even think about it. She just sets up a flawless backdrop and then puts herself in the perfect spot. I don't know how to explain it. She does balance subconsciously, and it's flawless. And I'm going to show that when I bring her on. I want you to see that bullshit, because, like I said, she doesn't even think about it. She glances over her shoulder and then slides the camera over and squats down. She's perfect every time. It makes my autism feel much better.
Yeah, I definitely have those ADD, whatever kind of tendencies, and I think that's one thing that helps with YouTube. It's almost like some nice little outlet to, you know, get your ideas and everything out there.
Well, that is the show, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate y'all coming by.
Fuck this shit, I'm out. Fuck this shit, I'm out. No thanks. Don't mind me. I'ma just grab my stuff and leave. Excuse me, please. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Nope. Fuck this shit, I'm out. Alright then. I don't know what the fuck just happened, but I don't really care. I'ma get the fuck up out of here. Fuck this shit, I'm out.
This is ridiculous. What is going on in here? We get crack at the end?